Hey, Rory, welcome to the show.
Hey, Britt. Thanks so much for having me. I'm really excited to be here.
Of course. Let's kick off your interview learning more about you. You said you just came home from Tahoe this Memorial Day weekend. That's so awesome. Where are you located now?
Yeah, I'm based out of the Bay Area in Oakland, California. So I've been out here and yeah, just drove up for the weekend for the holiday. It was really nice to unplug and unwind for a few days and get back at it now. So
Founders, do not be afraid. Founders, take a day to get off the phone.
I wholeheartedly agree.
Yeah, I get my best business ideas on like sides of mountains, honestly.
Yeah. We were off trailing this weekend, and which was a first for me. I was a little scared we weren't going to make it down, but finally we did. So it was pretty fun.
That's awesome. Well, tell us more about, your personal background. Where are you from originally? What did you study? And what are you working on now?
Yeah, awesome. So I'm actually originally from the Bay Area. However, I spent about 12 years on the East Coast. I went back east for undergrad, did undergrad in human biology, got interested in healthcare, started a career in kind of digital health consulting in the life sciences industry, worked in New York for a number of years, and then finally made it back here to the West Coast again. Just finished my MBA at Cal last May, and yeah, launched Aila Health out of that. So really, I've always kind of had a focus and passion on how digital is transforming healthcare and access to information, and now kind of utilizing that to launch the company. So.
When you say you started to look at digital health, how long ago was that? Because what I'm interested in knowing is, were you starting to get into digital health when people were like, what the heck is digital health, or was it already?
Yeah, it was in like 2012. So almost 10 years ago. I remember sitting with the Teladoc guys at some conference when they were a small startup. So it's kind of interesting. And then kind of beating the drum on why, paying attention to kind of consumerization of healthcare services, information, how kind of the internet's been this great equalizer and giving access to clinical content and education information to patients. And so really kind of focusing in on those trends around, patient empowerment and advocacy, really, to bring forth kind of new treatments, new study opportunities for these patient communities in kind of niche chronic illness areas.
Awesome. Well, what is Aila Health?
Yeah, so thanks so much for asking. We're building a virtual care platform for patients living with long-term complex chronic illnesses, focusing specifically on autoimmune diseases. Really important to me. I've got a number of friends and family that have suffered from long-term chronic autoimmune conditions, kind of seeing their diagnostic journey, which is incredibly challenging and stressful, and thought, hey, there's got to be a better way where we can actually give more personalized care to patients living with these diseases, because everyone has kind of a different expression of those diseases. And so how can we use data and technology to do that? And that's how Aila was born.
Love it. Well, you are on the Femtech Focus Podcast. Why are you on the Femtech Focus Podcast? What does this have to do with women's health?
Such a great question, and something I'm so passionate about. In fact, so there's about 1 in 6 Americans that are estimated to be living with an autoimmune condition. Only about half of those have a formal diagnosis yet. When you drill into that, about 75% of cases are women. So it heavily skews female. They're still trying to uncover the science behind why that is. Some people think it's hormonal, some genetic component. It's not 100% understood, but that's one of the reasons why I really am interested and passionate about this space, is just building greater health equity. Because, why the heck are all these women living with these debilitating diseases and not a ton's getting done about it? We do have pockets in the scientific community, but how can we aggregate resources and bring about real change in this space?
Yes. Well, I want to talk about 2 things real quick in terms of chronic illness. We're going to talk for 30 minutes about it, but these 2 things that came up for me right now was, one, we have been doing at Femtech Focus market research on like, what is the real value of the women's health market in general? Like, what is the amount of money here? And I realized that what we needed to do is break down what is women's health, find all those market sizes, add it up, right? And so one of the, as you just said, segments is chronic conditions, because these chronic illnesses disproportionately affect women. And so we incorporated like percentages, like if 70% of patients are women, then we'll take 70% of the market, say that that's the market value for women. It was crazy to me. Chronic illness was by far the biggest market, like by leaps and bounds over femme hygiene, breast cancer, even like it was number one. Did you know that? Like, are you trying to scream from the rooftops that this is a huge market, or how is that being received now?
Yeah, it's a huge market. It's largely underserved. And I think that has a lot to do with a number of factors, right? There's high cost treatments in this space. That's one. There's a lot of failing on therapies and the way it's set up for how people can kind of step through the different therapy options as they're trying out different therapeutics that might work for them. And then there's also just like I guess, I wouldn't call them invisible costs, but like the secondary costs, or like loss of productivity, leaving workforce, just all of that kind of extracting stuff out of the economy and stuff like that. So I think that there's direct costs from just actual care and how much patients are leveraging the healthcare system to get access to specialists and other providers that they need. But then there's also this other cost of, loss of function, and how does that impact your ability to, sustain an income and stuff like that. So
Yep. No, definitely. The other thing that came up for me was this idea of, we still don't know why women are disproportionately affected by autoimmune disease. And I feel like I keep hearing different hypotheses. I'd love to hear some of yours. One I heard was that, trauma and PTSD and emotions are stored in the body. And so it's just that women are like traumatized more or stressed out more. And so their immune systems are more active. That was one hypothesis I heard. This past weekend, I heard a woman, she's a big believer in Eastern medicine, essential oils. And she said, oh, the autoimmune disease is because of how many cleaning products women are using. And I was just like, man, we have no idea. Like, all of these sound maybe right, but I mean, what do you think? You're the one who's working in this.
Yeah.
What do you
hear? I'll caveat this with, I'm not a clinical scientist. But there are a number of different theories about kind of the causes or what exacerbates a flare. I have heard of like toxic people kind of doing a detox in the chemicals they keep in the products in their home. I don't know if there's scientific papers out on that yet. I'm sure that will continue to be studied as the field evolves. Definitely stress is like, so just for my sample, right? I've interviewed probably close to 150 patients now. And of that, like 90% or something overwhelming, like my symptoms started to flare up when I had a stressor event or a trigger event. I was in grad school working 20 hours a day, or I just, had a pregnancy that was really stressful, or there is some connection, at least that they're exploring now in kind of adverse childhood events. That's actually data we capture in our application as well, to see if we can connect or correlate any of that to presence of different types of symptoms. And so I think that that's one of our goals too, right? Is to just better understand these diseases by collecting and aggregating kind of each person's unique experiences with their condition, because they are so variable and it's not super well aggregated across different kinds of chronic illnesses. But I think that there is a few different kind of things that contribute to it. Genetics, I think also, being a core component, they have this interesting wheel of the different genes that map to different autoimmune diseases, and that there's like a lot of overlap between a few of those. And so again, I think as more money and research pours into this space, we're going to get more understanding. But because the phenotypes or the symptom presentation is so variable patient to patient, that's what's made it so hard to study. And so that's one of our main goals, was how can we quantify this in a way where we can actually learn from these, how patients report about their symptoms, and kind of generate a better understanding of how to treat and manage them over time.
This is a classic Femtech scenario where we have a Femtech founder who is saying, yeah, our product is actually going to discover a lot because we don't know, like we're creating a product for a problem, and like we're doing research throughout that whole process. Right. Yeah.
Definitely. I think you see that a lot in this space. And I think, I've been doing my own research recently, and a few physicians in the field. I think even you've probably had some guests on the Femtech Focus, podcast, and kind of the community that I'm now a part of, that focus on just the disparities in research for women's health. And it actually came up on a call with a major pharma this morning that I was talking to, around how there's just such a lack of insight in the clinical data. And so we need new mechanisms to capture this. And I think luckily, actually, women are sharers, and in the communities I've studied and participated in, especially in this space, like people, want to share their experiences, and they want someone to hear them and also validate them. I think that was one of the biggest needs that I saw in this space, was like, a lot of patients go years not being believed, or just, you're basically discarded with, okay, you have stress or anxiety, and that's all it is. I've dealt with certain things as well, where practitioners have said, oh, just, have a glass of wine and relax, but like not being able to see that there's actually a symptom there. And so that was one of the things that we set out to do, was quantify, so that patients could say, no, my baseline is 5. I'm at a 9 right now. Like, it's bad. Don't just take me compared to like the standard deviation. My situation's personal to me. And so that's what we're really trying to get at, and bringing out kind of personalized health for each individual patient.
I love that, because I actually often get asked by like my own coaches, like, how are you doing? And they say, and don't compare yourself to previous you, like, because I have been really, really stressed in the past, right? I've been in a PhD program while starting a startup and fundraising. And I'm like, well, in comparison, I'm doing well. And it's like, you don't always compare yourself to the worst possible time your chronic illness was inflamed. Like, you're allowed, you should be able to live a life where you feel amazing, and not just like getting by. What are some of the current options for women with chronic illness? And what are some other ones? I know you said autoimmune disease. So is there other categories, and what are the current options for them?
Options from like a virtual care platform, or
care in general doesn't need to just be virtual, but yeah.
Yeah, I think, I think patients do, like, especially those that have been living with their diseases. Most of the ones I talk to are like, that have been living with them for a while, or like, I'm an expert in my own body. Like, I know my care better than my doctor at this point, or more about some of the new research than some of my doctors at this point. I think the care journey for most patients is still very fragmented, which is something we wanted to change. Data is trapped in, one specialist over here, another specialist over here, my primary over here. Not all of them are connected or talking together. And so that was, again, one of the other kind of friction points we wanted to look at and address. So I'd say, it's relatively fragmented. People ultimately are, kind of going online, going to these communities to try and seek out resources and support from other patients who have tried different things. And, there's a combination of tools in the toolkit, right? So some of that can be like lifestyle modifications. A lot of people talk about doing an anti-inflammatory diet. That's something we built into our application to help people kind of make that transition and just kind of gain an overall awareness of actually their foods are compounds, and they actually exacerbate inflammation as well. And so just kind of educating people on that, about how they can do some modification on that to mitigate their inflammatory response. I think like active stress management as well is another thing we're seeing kind of largely come out in the space, and being kind of conducted in trials at major medical centers as well. Understanding how mindfulness techniques can actually impact your inflammatory response. Actually, one of the wellness coaches on our team has a PhD in utilizing meditation to address the inflammatory response. So it's really cool. What?
Are they super zen? Are they like a super?
She's like the most amazing person. I'm like, I think honestly, like my team is definitely like people that I was attracted to, because I felt like I needed them. I'm like, you're like, can you be my coach? So she's very wonderful. Yeah, it's a very calming spirit. And that was, kind of aligns with our methodology of you treat the whole person. You're not just looking at, I'm getting this one symptom and this one drug. Like, what are all the factors of my life, and really delivering kind of more holistic program that looks at, sleep, nutrition, mental health, stress management, developing communities for support. We wanted to kind of pull that all into one thing.
Do you think that's often a solution for women's health conditions, is like this omni-channel treatment, or is it more specific for chronic illness?
I think this is kind of the future of healthcare. I hope, because like I think we all can see like the current model is just expensive and the outcomes are not really improving too significantly. And so I think if we can look at these other things, there's a lot of independent studies on different factors of how they impact health outcomes. And so we want to kind of take this combined approach. I've partnered with a functional medicine doctor initially, and his approach to treating chronic illness really mirrors with that. And so I think we're going to see a lot of changes in the space with trying to kind of add on support and solutions, because they are such big predictors of health outcomes. And I think, another thing that I've heard a lot from hospital folks and other healthcare systems is around just like leveraging data to support people and like their social determinants, right? So like, do I have access to transportation? Do I have access to job? Do I have access to food? And I think a lot of these things are, again, just constant stressors if you don't. And so helping to mitigate that in your life and provide those resources so people can be healthy, I think is going to be a big change. And it's still small, but like, I feel like I've been hearing more about that over the last few years about health systems starting to put a greater focus on that. Yeah. Like the whole person.
Yep, absolutely. The first time I started to hear about that was when I went to grad school in 2013 in Houston. We have MD Anderson, this giant, I mean, it's not one building, it's literally campuses of buildings all trying to cure cancer. Right.
Right.
The first time I heard about like this, like multifaceted way to treat people was at this cancer center, they have like your meditation coach, your nutritionist, your therapist, and then your oncologist, your radiologist. And I was like, what? These people, like, there's an acupuncture building, and it's like, they're really bringing it in. And I see them as like, pioneers in medicine. So they're obviously onto something. Hopefully everyone, you can just get acupuncture right in there in the waiting room for any doctor.
Yeah. I mean, I think that's the dream, right? And so it's just, how we think about it from a technology perspective is just how do you make this scalable, right? And accessible to people at a price point or like that a healthcare system can actually support, right? So oncology is obviously very expensive, and having these wraparound services can support. But thinking about there's 2 in 3 Americans living with a chronic condition today, and how do you actually solve for that large of a population in a scalable way? And I think that's one of the benefits of leveraging technology and moving from like a direct kind of one-to-one care model, but like actually enabling kind of greater distribution of some of the education around how these things can help you. Because there's just too many patients and too little time. Like I talked to primary care doctors, and they're like, I'd love to talk to them about a personalized exercise plan to get their metabolic health in the right place, but like I don't have time and I need to move on to the next patient. And so I think that's where you're going to see a lot of technology come in to fill some of the gaps.
I love that. Like the physician has been the fire hose, and like everyone's trying to drink out of it, and they got 10 minutes a person.
Yeah.
Half of that is, how do you feel? And then, so you think like smart apps and like when you say tech, what else do you mean? And like maybe your company is doing some of these things. What are some ways we can tech all of this up and spread it out?
Yeah, no, I mean, definitely applications, obviously. I believe in that. And I think, I'm really excited about just the way we can leverage data. I've actually already seen in the research and in my previous role, like looking at how you can leverage data to actually better understand, get to quicker diagnosis for people, right? Like instead of going to 15 specialists or 20 specialists over 5 years for your disease, what if you could pick that up earlier in the primary care visit, right? Instead of having to see 15 specialists and take 25 tests. So I think that's kind of the promise of technology that I'm really seeing, is that can we actually get people diagnosed and on a kind of more holistic care plan earlier, rather than spending these years while their, diseases are actually kind of depleting them or impacting them in negative ways, and actually move people back to like a phase of health or prevent them from declining. So the traditional model is just not set up for that. So that's what I'm really excited about, is kind of the leveraging of data to be able to kind of make inferences and really truly personalize health at scale, right? We're not all under this kind of bell curve of like, on average, we're actually looking at what's right for Rory, what's right for Britt, based on our genetic makeup, based on our, preferences, based on our lifestyle, like all of these different things. And I think that that's what we're going to see applied to healthcare over the next decade or more.
Yeah. I mean, just as we argue, women are not little men, women amongst themselves are very different. And so we all need different treatment plans. And we have different symptoms that bother us more than others. And
right.
So one size did not fit all.
And this is not any way that I pretend to be an expert on, but just like my own kind of research about hormonal health, right? And it is so different. And you see this in a lot of like sexual health companies that are focusing on this. And I think it's just fascinating. I just think our biology is so much to go in terms of what we can learn about it. And so I'm very encouraged by all the, people, entrepreneurs in this space who are starting to think about like, how can we address the needs for those types of people?
Totally.
And the differences between us. Yeah.
Speaking of like predictive analytics, I saw on your website, you talk a lot about, and we've talked about using artificial intelligence, AI. So how would that get incorporated? I know some of our listeners, this may be a little over their head, or they're maybe AI. Oh my God, what are you talking about? But what is AI in terms of chronic conditions, and how can it be useful for women's health?
Yeah, I think the goal is really to leverage kind of artificial intelligence, machine learning to really, like I said before, kind of leverage the data inputs that you're getting and utilize that to make predictions about future outcomes. And so in some cases that can be, I'm predicting a flare coming on based on, the impacts or the inputs we've seen in the historical data for a particular patient. I think that's one of the biggest areas of opportunity in healthcare is, right? What if you could prevent someone from having to go into an emergency room visit because you kind of could see this coming on and you were able to outreach, have a clinician reach out to that patient and intervene or provide some kind of level of support before that was to happen. And so I think that that's where we'll see a lot of changes. And for us, it's all about leveraging, again, artificial intelligence and these data structures to really personalize care. So how can we use your preferences and then learn from those preferences to, suggest things that are more beneficial for you over time? And I think that that's just like kind of a base case of utilizing that technology for that. Amazing.
What are some of your future goals for your company?
Yeah. So, I mean, we're early days, but, really we're very focused on raising awareness and getting the word out that we are here and we're supporting patients. And we'll be opening kind of our clinic very soon in the next month, I think. So that's really exciting. So we're just kind of kicking off now. Over time, we of course would love to work with clinical researchers who are studying this space. I've actually talked to a number of folks within that space because we have the functionality to be able to kind of do these trials and kind of remote clinical studies at scale. And then ultimately just provide a better patient experience. So we're really trying to, again, gain awareness, get patients leveraging the platform, and then have them see the benefits of this kind of holistic care model, really driving change in their care trajectory. I think that that's like the ultimate goal for us. So
I love it. Are chronic conditions or chronic illnesses usually in older individuals, or is it all ages?
No, yeah, that's a common misconception.
I feel like I've had this
people only focus on the Medicare market, but there's like it's like shocking actually sometimes seeing people living with these chronic illnesses and quite young getting diagnosed. And yeah, there's a need in the market for services for them too, right? Like we're not just talking about the Medicare population that, of course, as you age, you have a number of chronic illnesses, but this is young women, their entire lives, not being able to work or have a career, sometimes have kids, it impacts your fertility. And so, yeah, it needs to change. We need to bring about services and solutions that actually enable people to live longer and healthier lives.
Yeah. Cause we probably see women that look healthy in our daily lives that are 30s, and we wouldn't think at the grocery store, oh, that person is suffering with a chronic illness. Right. But
exactly. Yeah. They're called invisible illnesses. Right. And that's why, because on the outside you could look completely healthy, but on the inside you might be battling, not only maybe like lupus or chronic fatigue or something, but also, a lot of the stuff that comes along with that, which is stress, anxiety, depression. We see a lot of people suffering from kind of, mental health issues from just the long-term impacts of living with a debilitating chronic condition. So
yeah, that's right. Wow. Well, this has been so amazing. We have a lot of listeners that are aspiring Femtech founders. So what's an area in women's health and wellness that you think still needs innovating?
Besides autoimmune, I definitely think that there's like a number of great players in the space, and, sexual reproductive health. I think maternal health has had a lot of innovation. I think, even like things like, sounds kind of basic, but cardiovascular health, I think that's like one of the number one maladies for women actually. But again, it's just treated very differently. So a professor, or I can't remember if she's a professor or clinician in Rhode Island, actually writes a lot about this and how like the disparities in kind of detecting symptoms for women for cardiovascular health. And so I think if we could get a little bit more specific around that, or some, innovation around that, that could be a huge game changer for a lot of women. So just really kind of coming up with like, this is what it looks like for men who've been studied, and this is what it looks like for women. I think there's still a lot of room in that area. So
I love it. I totally agree. When it comes to cardiovascular, it seems like, well, there's so much money and there's just so much research. There's the Heart Institute of Texas, Heart Institute of New Jersey, blah, blah, blah. And yet we interviewed a doctor a few weeks ago. She's a cardiologist and she started the Women's Heart Center. And she was like, I could not believe when I told people I want to start a heart, cardiovascular clinic specifically for women, they were like, that's never been done before. She's like, what? Like nobody in a heart center saying I'm going to specialize only in women's heart. Like it's always been hearts in general. And it's like, whoa, that's so crazy.
Well, so you have pediatrics, right? But then you don't but then we are treated completely the same when we know inherently our biology is completely different. So I think you will see more investment in that. Like, I think people are kind of wisening up. You probably, the size of the women's health market. So it's encouraging, because I just think we're on this new frontier of scientific discovery for women's health. So
love it. Well, our last question is, what do you think the femtech industry as a whole needs the most right now in order to be successful?
Horsepower. I think, money where your mouth is, right? Like there's all this talk about inclusivity, and I think we've seen that a lot over the last year. And so like, let's put some money behind things that actually impact our wives, mothers, girlfriends, aunts, and really kind of be as investors. I think, you see, I've talked to a number of femtech investors, and they're wonderful, but like also beating the drum amongst like the non-femtech investors of like, how can we actually get more rallied support behind that? Because I think if you make it personal, people can start to see that. And so that's what I mean by economic horsepower. It's like, just let's start dumping money into it.
Yes. I love it. Bring in the money, everybody.
Yeah.
We're like episode 130, 90 money. So we're going to keep beating the drum.
Exactly. I mean, that's how you see things kind of change. So, but yeah.
Rory, you are amazing. Thank you so much for your time today.
Thanks so much for having me.
This is a huge market. I just, like I said, calculated the number the other day, and I was like, damn, this is actually number one. And then we had our interview scheduled. So I was like, wow, this is a huge, huge, huge problem for women. And I'm so glad we have people like you working on it.
Amazing. Yeah. Thanks so much for having me. I really enjoyed it, and look forward to seeing more of these podcasts come out.
Awesome. I just ended the audio. Let me save it real quick here. And interview. Super awesome.
Thanks. That was great.
Oh yeah. It just sounds like two friends talking. That's what people always say.
Yeah, I like it. I like it a lot.
And then the last thing we do is we take a little screen recording of your face, introducing yourself, and then you say like what Femtech means to you. Did you see that part of the email?
I mean, I did when I first looked at it. So now I need to like think about it for a second.
No problem. No problem.
What does Femtech mean to me? I mean, yeah. Okay. I think I have it. It's kind of more thematic with my whole interview, but.
No, perfect. That's perfect. Yeah. So just make sure to introduce yourself. Hi, I'm Rory, CEO and founder of Aila Health. And Femtech to me is, or Femtech means to me, like whatever you want to there. Okay. And if you mess up, just laugh and take a breath and do it again. Okay.
Do it again. Okay.
Whenever you're ready, go ahead.
Hi, I'm Rory, founder and CEO of Aila Health. And Femtech to me means equality. Should I go on beyond that? Or did I just mess it up?
You can if you want.
Okay, no, I can stop. And that's all I meant to say.
Okay.
I didn't know if it was like, should I be like, da-da-da?
No. Okay. That's fine. There's people that are like, they do it, then they do more philosophical, or they just like punchy, like you just did, or
yeah. Okay.
There's a mix. It's always so fun to see what people do. We have a good variety of them. Awesome. Cool. Well, we're all good. Sue Wern will follow up with you about like when it's going to be aired and if we need anything from you, and then we'll all promote it.
Cool. Sounds great. Yeah. How's everything going with you otherwise?
Good. Going good. Yeah.
Justin. How's the launch of the new fund?
Yeah. We're fundraising and working through that process. And we have about 500,000 committed. So now it's like, it's the boring part of business where we're like talking to lawyers and it's like oh my God, I hate that. I hate it.
Yeah. No, that's tough. Part. Awesome. Well, cool. It sounds exciting. Definitely appreciated the opportunity to present, and let's stay in touch, and hopefully I can catch up with you in maybe a month or so.
Yeah, let's do it. All right. I want to hear about your progress then. Okay.
Okay. Take care. Bye.